Colin's just a great dude. He's really fun to be around. He loves to travel, which obviously he's on a beach right now, so that clearly tells you what he loves to do. I love selling Cutco because it gives him the opportunity to create his dream life, combining work and play. He loves selling it. He said here he sells street festivals on the weekend in a new city. He loves going to people's homes, hosting events, and he just says that Cutco never feels like work to him, which is a huge blessing. I mean, they always say, if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. But he's really excited to share because he loves Vector. He loves to give back and teach, obviously, the people he's mentored. And we're super appreciative to have him here today. We're going to have Colin talk about ultimate upgrades for us because I know that he's really good at that. And that's something that we could all improve on as a team. And I know he's learned from the best of the best and kind of put that together. So without further ado, I'll let you take it away, buddy.
Real quick, I have to say, you son of a bitch, you're doing this from a beach. You bastard. I'm so jealous, and that's a topper. You could literally drop a mic right now, and I'm so excited to hear this. Anyway, sorry, now go.
Yeah, no, it's not a background filter. Some people ask that. So Matt reached out to me to talk about past Cutco owners, and I want to give you guys a little context why I thought that was the perfect topic. I think if anybody's like old school Cutco, before I had left Cutco, basically you'd become, if you could last more than a summer and you didn't go branch manager, you would survive on pink sheets, right? Does anybody come from a pink sheet background? It was awesome. It was a grind. It was a totally different type of grind. Maybe people are doing pink sheets now, but my early career was all built on exclusively Cutco owners. Fairs and shows weren't even a thing in Chicago at the time. We would do like something and just collect the leads and go sell in the home. But it was just a really different business. And so when I talk about this, I just think that there's a lot of bigger picture. And the first thing, if you guys are really just thinking about the lifeblood of our business, right? At the end of the day, Cutco's created this amazing raving fan base that we get to tap into at any time. And if you utilize these people correctly, especially as testimonials and getting them to your events and really interact with them a lot, you can use the power of the brand that Cutco spent 75 years to build for new customers to really get things really quickly. So I just think we really need to applaud the fact that we even have a program for selling to current Cutco owners because they're so extremely excited to talk to us about what's new, what's going on. And especially if you come from a service first mindset, people are just really, really excited to add to their collection. So I wanted to talk about ultimate upgrades because as you see a lot of Cutco owners, any guys that are selling a lot and have been around for a while can attest that you're going to really run into people that already have a bunch of the signature knives, right? And so you have to end up getting really good at selling people things like Santoku paring knives and, anything but maybe a cheese knife, right? I mean, vegetable knives and boning knives and salmon knives. And some people have gotten so good at this that they upgrade people these custom ultimates all the time. And I sought out the best of the best, seeing guys they're doing it. And I found Jason, and Jason's program, in my opinion, is the best ultimate upgrade approach that has ever been created. So that's why I want to go on. I gave you guys a link in the chat box. Are you guys able to open that chat? Give me a thumbs up. All right, cool. So that was a call we did where someone transcribed the call. And I think this has all the money nuggets that you guys are really, really looking for. So I'm going to go through the notes, give you a little bit of my own notes and anecdotes with it. And then at the end, if you guys want some questions or you have comments, I'm happy to answer. Also, if the beach we are at, if you guys have ever been to Puerto Rico, we're in Aguada. So I don't know if you guys have ever been by Aguada, but it's right by the Aguadilla Airport. It's about 2 hours from San Juan, but highly recommend, and pristine and untouched. Really, really beautiful out here. So the first thing you'll see on here is I was talking about who are the best people to pitch the ultimate upgrade to, who are the people that we're going to show those to first. And obviously our own past customers are always going to be the best because the better we were when we sold to them, the better the upgrade and the easier the upgrade will be later. Also, I look for 5-piece owners, someone that got a 5-piece in a tray. Obviously people that got the 5-piece from me are better, but however they got the 5-piece, it's great. They might have gotten a kitchenette set, 20 years ago. A lot of people have these 5-piece sets that came in the trays. That was the old version of the studio, essentially. And then people that bought a homemaker, right? I mean, think about the college kid came over. They already spent $1,000 on a whim. They'll spend $1,000 again. I look at people that have Homemaker Plus 8s as, you know, obviously the prime candidate. And one of the phrases that I've noticed, you know, I think it's important when you have context, when you learn something, and something I've learned when I learn things. Sometimes you know, we've all heard something a bunch of times. Maybe we didn't retain it, so we didn't really learn it. Everybody's heard that. But I think, B, sometimes there's a way that something's approached that isn't as sexy as something you've heard, but the reason that it's done is because it works the highest percentage of the time and gets the best reaction. So a lot of what I've learned and a lot of what I put in here from this is my own approach and my own notes that's built upon a lot of things, are things I've just noticed when I do this to a customer, it works more often, even if it's not as cool sounding. So I really want you guys to take that context when you're reading this. And so a lot of things I put in quotes are things that get a 99.9% positive response rate, and we'll follow along with the structure psychologically that people come to the conclusion we want. And I think that phrase, half the people don't even use half the knives in their sets anyways. You know, most people don't even use half the knives in their set. Okay, so that's something that we want to pre-frame from a customer, because we don't want them to think about if they're going to use everything. We want them to think about how the idea of having the new knives, the best knives Cutco's ever made, are going to be better than the knives in their original set that they're not even using. Okay. Another thing, I think when we're describing ultimate upgrades, some people give way too much context for the customer, but especially in Fair and Show, which I think is a lot of how people are selling here, you don't really, I don't think, need that. You don't need a lot of pre-framing, in my opinion. A lot of times you just want to get someone into a couple knives, and if they're not vibing, like, you can move to someone quicker. Like the quicker you intro, the quicker you can get out of something, right? So if anybody here is a talker at the booth and you get stuck on stuff, and then maybe you have someone that's more of a builder next to you, you know, this happens to me sometimes, and they've already closed 2 sets while you're in a bullshit conversation over fisherman solution. I've discovered that the best way to really combat that is to start really quick. So if I go into, hey, you know, these knives are customer requested, people actually wrote into Cutco requesting these pieces, they end up being our best, most used pieces. They're going to be the ones that you like the most. I mean, you know how you love that trimmer? And if you go right into it like that, and you get someone, and I've noticed this at a service event, if you go right into something with like a 4-inch paring knife and they just cut something, you can tell if they're going to hook or not a lot quicker than giving a lot of background. So you can cut potato with a trimmer, then cheese knife. Important here, if someone already has a cheese knife, or if you're trying to avoid selling cheese knives, which I routinely, I don't like selling them that much because it kind of kills the upgrade, then a Santoku cheese knife works really well here. Or you can cut with a 4-inch paring knife, and it cuts amazing on a potato compared to a trimmer too. So you can flex this a little bit, right? And when you show them the fact that a trimmer doesn't cut everything, you're going to get that person that uses their trimmer for everything, which is a lot of our past customers, and they're like, oh shit, wait, maybe the new knives do something different. You know, a lot of people say, I'll use my trimmer for everything, I'll use my chef knife for everything. It's really hard to actually argue with that unless you demonstrate it. So a lot of times a potato for me isn't to sell a cheese knife or get that. It's to actually just show the fact that different tools have different purposes, and you might not know that the tool you've been using your whole life for something is actually totally incorrect, and there's something that's 10 times easier. So a trimmer 4-inch paring knife can also accomplish that. Another thing I'm giving context here is that toolboxes have different tools for different purposes. I think that's a pretty universally understood concept. But when you cut a potato, another thing I've discovered you can anchor without having to do a lot of selling on other pieces. This can help you increase the speed of a pitch really, really easily without doing a lot of extra explaining, is you can anchor the experience that someone had with a potato to any other knife cutting its respective job better. So a lot of times if I'm going to cut a potato with a 4-inch paring knife or a cheese knife, I'm going to say, hey, by the way, that isn't because this knife is amazing. It's because this knife is doing what it's intended to do. So every time that you use a knife for what it's actually designed for, like Cutco's have been doing this for almost 80 years. I promise they really have this figured out, okay? Millions and millions of customers reviews that these are the right tools for the right jobs, right? So when you do use the right tool, it's just going to be 10 times easier. That's why people love our boning knife. And you can sell a boning knife in 10 seconds with that. Because you say, because just like the trimmer cuts the potato, that's how a trimmer feels on raw meat. You got to saw through. Our boning knife, look at this. It's perfect. It's skinny. It's thin. It slices through just like that cheese knife on a potato. So at the beginning of this, I think it's important that you can really dumb all this down to anchoring people to one experience, and you could flip these through the booth really quick. And that's what I've noticed the best of the best do, specifically that. So here's the order of the ultimate upgrade. You guys may be familiar with this order already, but I think there's a reason that it works. So we'll jump through it. Obviously, the first one is a 4-inch paring knife. So the 4-inch paring knife, you can just, it's so easy to get this reaction. I do this at service events all the time. People talk about the transition from the service table to the selling table at a service event. And I do service events pretty much every week now in a bunch of different markets after our shows, right? We'll get a bunch of leads at a show and then we'll just service them all in a day. And what I've really realized is a lot of times, if you can just get someone to see that a 4-inch paring knife is different than their original side by side, they're hooked, right? So if you're like, hey, remember your small little paring knife right here? I know it's a little bit too small for potatoes or apples sometimes. That's why we made a longer paring knife. Everybody wanted a bigger one, right? And then one more phrase that gets a 100% positive response rate in there is, or anytime you're showing multiple small knives, is you just say, hey, and that's why most people agree that you can just never have enough small everyday knives, right? Mrs. Jones, you can never have enough small everyday knives, right? That's why people have, 2, 3, 4 paring knives, 3 trimmers, a bunch of steak knives, right? Your everyday knives, you can never have enough of. But in most of our sets, we're only getting the big knives for specific tasks in a lot lower quantities. So you'll notice in like an ultimate upgrade, you get 2 or 3 bigger knives, but most of them are just small everyday knives that are just better than the ones you've ever used before. Another thing that works is these homie pieces were designed in the 40s, and people cook a lot differently now. And if you nod while you say that, you get another 100% response rate. That helps a lot. Second knife I like to show is a petite Santoku. Oh, by the way, if someone already has a 4-inch paring knife, Santoku paring, super easy. You can show how the front drags kind of like a bird's beak, really easy to sell that instead. And you can keep this going without doing a lot of modification. Secondly, petite Santoku, if you don't already have in your booth set up, I don't know if you guys are no knives. I'm doing no knives right now. And so I keep a French chef in my ultimate block. Or if your homemaker block is close, you can keep it there. But I actually show the French chef in comparison to a petite Santoku. And I show out, and actually a lot of people that got their sets back in the 80s and 90s have French chefs. When you show them a petite chef, sometimes people are super stoked about that. They're like, wait, that's not my knife. So I've noticed this gets a really high response rate also when you show French chef versus petite Santoku, and immediately people go, if you do them side by side, you actually don't have to say anything. You guys probably have done this maybe, and you hand them a petite Santoku, and they're like, oh my God, I love that, right? Another thing you can do at a service event, maybe not as good at a show, is you can show someone how to chop with the back of a petite Santoku instead of raising it all the way and using the front. It's a great way to build a bunch of rapport and teach someone something. Another thing I've noticed is you can just use the sound effects of the knife. So you can say, chop, 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 and scoop, like an everyday chopper, and you can hand it to them. And that also gets a really good response. So you want to get through those 2 knives, and then you cut a potato, and you can do trim or cheese knife for the potato if you want there, right? You just don't oversell the cheese knife. It's not a tomato knife. Yes, it cuts tomatoes, but there are other knives for tomatoes. I really like to stick the cheese knife into a category of sticky, starchy things. So if I'm doing potatoes, I'm doing cheese, I'm doing maybe a starchy apple, but 4-inch paring knife already said apple, right? So I take that out too. Anytime you're cutting citrus, I think it's a perfect bar knife. So if anybody's cut lemons and limes with a cheese knife, epic. Mini cheese knife. If someone already has a cheese knife, you can do that rocking motion. If you guys are good at doing the thin slices by keeping the cheese knife on the cutting board. I just sell that with a mini cheese knife, and people eat it up. Do the same motion, and they buy that knife all day long, and you can keep them away from the larger cheese knife. Another thing also that works, if you guys want to sell a Santoku cheese knife, is you just talk about everybody wanted it to have a point because they realize this knife is great for peppers, and they want to core out the top. So do you ever cut peppers sometimes, Mr. Jones? Oh my gosh, you'd love this little knife for that. Boning knife and Hardy slicer, I like to sandwich in the middle because you're anchoring the boning knife to the cheese knife experience. Okay, there's a video on YouTube that sells this really well if someone's just not getting it. But I've just realized, like in our own cooking at our own home, 2 things with raw meat, okay? First of all, even when we cheat and we use our 7-inch Santoku to cut up chicken breast and stuff, I have to sharpen that thing all the time. I mean, just from my own experience, right? I mean, it just isn't an efficient way to use that knife because we chop a lot of veggies, right? We do a lot of onions and garlic and peppers. And so why would I dull my everyday chopper by using it for a job that's not even intended for? So I just ask people, do you guys cut chicken breasts, like butterfly them in half sometimes? And everybody does that because chicken breast comes so thick now. 100% response rate generally on that. Oh my gosh, if you guys butterfly chicken, this is absolutely the best tool for it. And you can also see, if you guys have done it with the 7-inch Santoku in your own experience, the concave hollow grind, the extra grind that's applied if you guys are visualizing the knife, the boning knife doesn't have that. That's what I feel like gets stuck. If you guys have done a butterfly with a 7-inch Santoku, it's a too thick of a blade and it has an extra grind, which keeps it sharp for chopping. It's not designed to be used off a cutting board like that. So this knife is, I mean, it's just really perfect for it. People know it's a fillet knife, but I think it sells the easiest when you mention chicken breast butterfly. People don't bone anymore. That's why I don't even talk about boning knife. I'm just like, you guys do chicken, this is the best knife for it. Don't use your chef knife. Hardy Slicer also, if you've seen the Jason video where he cuts the squash, or where Candace cuts the squash with it, I think that's the best video for that knife. She shows how it's actually gourmet prep, but you could either one, and how you shimmy the front in. And if I show someone the knife, I just show them the Hardy Slicer next to a Petite Santoku, and I say, hey, see the thickness of this blade? The reason your other knives get stuck in squashes and melons and sweet potatoes is because they're too thin. A thin knife doesn't actually do that starchy food that much. So we've actually realized when you have a thick blade that's serrated, I mean, it's just a knife you can't kill. We use our chef knives every day, but sometimes we use our chef knives on hard stuff, and that's why we have to sharpen them more often. So if you guys want to, sharpen your knives less often, have them be sharp for all the tools they're designed for, this Hardy Slicer is like a protector of the set, and it's perfect for root vegetables. And then also a cool one, funny backstory, I sold Siggy to this couple, and Siggy upgrade to this couple at a service event. And they had just gotten married, so we engraved a Hardy Slicer with his name, Pitmaster Jeff, because he loved to grill. And we put a nameplate on the Siggy block. Unfortunately, she comes to the service event the next year. They'd gotten divorced, and she ends up turning in this Hardy Slicer. She asked me to trade it out, so I traded it out for her. And I have this engraved Hardy Slicer that says Pitmaster Jeff on it. And I cannot tell you, first of all, how many people are named Jeff, which is weird, that come up to the booth. I don't know why. So many people you can hit. That's a weird aside, but it's the fact that when you show Pitmaster, you can get the engraving across, and you can talk about, do you have any guy that grills in your life? And now you can help a woman do an upgrade by saying at least he's getting a knife he's going to use all the time for something manly like grilling or something. So I think that that also helps if you're seeing a wife without a husband to close an upgrade, to mention, just like Pitmaster Jeff. I mean, that was Jeff's knife. He was super stoked. You guys be the same way. Is everybody with me so far? I feel like I went kind of fast.
Yeah.
Good.
Great,
Okay.
great stuff. Keep going.
Sweet. So if you guys are doing this already, it works really well, but you can sell the cleaver and the, this says straight edge Santoku Slicer. I just sell the serrated one now, or a Santoku carver. I don't know, I kind of swap them out all the time for this. But I just sell that and a cleaver together as the grilling knives. So you can kind of clump those two together to get through knives faster. By just saying, oh yeah, do you guys grill and barbecue? You do like meats and stuff? Is it just burgers and hot dogs? Are you guys doing like some cooler stuff? Oh yeah, what are you guys doing? I like to talk about grilling a little bit. And then you can include 2 meat knives in there and you can clump them together. Well, every kitchen needs a cleaver, duh, right? It's Cutco, it'll stay sharp forever or whatever, it'll last you forever. And this one's the best carving knife we've ever made. And then the Santoku Slicer, people mentioned, looks like a Brazilian carving knife. So I just mentioned that. Like, have you guys ever been to a Brazilian steakhouse where they carve at your table? Yeah, this is the same style of knife that they're actually using. It looks super, super similar. People vibe with that pretty quick. You can cut leather also. So people are like, that just looks like a bread knife, or they feel like they don't need a Santoku carver. I usually haven't cut leather with a cut owner yet. So just do a leather cut and just be like, that's how it carves meat. And then people are like, oh my gosh, I need that knife. It's funny how easy that is. Another thing, the Santoku trimmer, I've also realized is really easy to sell ladies that have a trimmer they brought into a service event that's already worn out in the front. So if you guys are mailing a lady's trimmer back, you can sell this all day long in your upgrade by just showing them how the Santoku style, all it's really done is prevent Cutco knives from dulling the front parts of them. So every time that we send, then this is a knife. Okay. It's new handles. They look like the old 60s Cutco. So the front part of the knife, all knives curve up at the end, right? So when you show this on a cutting board, the front part is constantly rubbing on the cutting board and dulling. And that's the #1 reason we have to send back people's trimmers, their favorite knives. Okay. And as reps, we think sometimes it's a glass cutting board, and no, she's just dragging that thing. She's probably using it on plates or counters occasionally or whatever. But if she just hasn't gotten that thing sharpened in 10 years and she's using it for everything and she's dragging the front part, like, you know, we don't necessarily have to change her style of cooking. We don't have to like argue with people or like teach them new things all the time. You can just kind of go with what they already do. So I'll just be like, yeah, so this is awesome. You don't have to do anything differently, Mrs. Jones, to avoid sending your favorite knife back. People just ask me all the time, can I get a second one? I'm like, well, why get a second one? You can get the upgraded one. Where now only the point dulls. It's really good on celery also. Do you cut celery sometimes? All right, you'll love it. So you can sell Santoku trimmers easily there. Bird's beak you can slide in here if it's like an older lady. I think a bird's beak is an easy like, oh, check this out, Miss Jones. Do you peel things in your hand? Oh, you'll love this thing. And you show her how it never dulls on a cutting board. And then I just like to end with two favorites. So I've switched this up. I used to do veggie knife, salmon knife, because I thought it was really good to end with the video on the salmon knife. But I use my vegetable knife so much now, I get really stoked about it. So I switched that. I do the salmon knife, show the video on the watermelon and show the flex. And then I finish with a veggie knife. And I've realized the veggie knife, a lot of times you can sell it just as an all-in-one chopper. So you hand them a cleaver to show that it's a lot lighter weight. I don't know if you guys already do that, but if you hand them a cleaver first and then you hand them a vegetable knife afterwards, they always say it's really nice and light. So you can eliminate that objection. And then you show how it's an all-in-one chopper. People, for some reason, love pinching a chef knife. So as soon as I do that on a cutting board, I don't even cut with it. I just show like, yeah, and this is the best pinch, Mrs. Jones, like that. And she's like, oh, I love that. It's weird. She probably doesn't even do it that much, right? But it's really good for garlic. There's a wider blade for smashing. Personally, I feel nervous smashing garlic with a petite chef or a French chef because it's just the point. And a lot of people relate with that. So I'm like, yeah, so you can smash without worrying about poking yourself. And then you can scoop the food. And then the front part, you might not notice, Mr. Jones, but it actually comes to a sharp corner. So you can use that just like I was showing you the bird's beak and drag through a couple things. You know, it's awesome. It's an all-in-one chopper. It takes the best from every chopper and see the way it's angled, kind of like your Santoku knife, where you're not drilling the front part when it rubs on a cutting board. So you can cut any way you want with it. Another thing that sells a vegetable knife easily is if you ask a lady if she's a rock and chop type, you get like a 50-50 on that. If someone says they're not a rock and chopper, you can use that for the vegetable knife really easily. Because I'll just say, oh, remember how you said you're not a big rock and chopper? That's why you don't want the French or the Japanese choppers. You'd be perfect for this one. It's a vegetable knife. I know it's a little heavy, but it's designed where you can chop any way you want or slice any way you want. And you don't have to follow any rules with this knife. And people like that. They're like, oh, no rules. It's awesome. Another thing that sells salmon knives, I want to slip in here. Do you ever cut mangoes, honeydew, or cantaloupe sometimes? And you get a really high response rate. So do you ever cut mangoes, cantaloupe, honeydew sometimes? You're like, yeah, sometimes. And you're like, oh, you'll love this knife. And people have already decided they'll love it. Also, steak knives versus table knives. The 4 on the end, I think that's pretty standard. You guys have a great script for that. I use exactly what Brian was taught with that. It literally says Brian Carter steak knife script at the top. So I think that is the best way to say that every single time. And then, okay, another thing with ultimate blocks, I gotta throw this in there. I've stopped arguing with people about blocks. When I introduce it, I try to eliminate the objection by showing my Sets for Life packet, which I use all the time. And I'm like, hey, look, literally, I know it looks big with the knives in it, but it's the width of the sheet of paper. So, and then I lay it in front. All you need is this footprint on the counter. It's not as much as it looks, right? If I get any, like, we won't use a block no matter what, it's actually good sometimes because what I do is I'm like, oh, that's perfect. But then what Cutco allows you to do actually is just swap the block for something else. So we'll cover that at the end, but you get a couple gadgets instead. It's awesome. And usually I'll do like 4 gadgets for free. That's 200, 250. The block was 367. So it actually sometimes gives you some really great wiggle room in there to do some stuff or work with them on cutting boards and sharpeners and whatever you want to do to meet that price, because the deal sheets have a standard price and I like to stay on the deal sheet, right? So just switch the block out for something and just don't even cover it, steamroll through that and just keep going. There's no sense in all this information you just covered on all these amazing knives and get them super stoked. And all of a sudden you're arguing about a freaking block that they don't want and all of their information just goes out their brain, okay? So I really recommend just steamroll the block conversation. And another thing important, you don't have to show 9 knives. Usually you show 6 or 7. They're super cool about it. And the type of person that wants an ultimate is they just have the right tool for the right job. So you're like, yeah, so I mean, you're getting the barbecue knives, you get a couple of the small everyday knives, you get that mini chopper you love, you get a cheese knife with it. I mean, it's awesome. It's just a couple extra knives to make life easier. It's really good, especially boomers love. Boomers love life being easier, okay? I read a book by Dan Kennedy talking about language for boomers, and anything that's about life being easier and more convenient is hot button trigger words for boomers specifically, which are our customers, okay? So you can say that. And then another thing, even if there's one or two you wouldn't use, it still costs the same. I mean, maybe more to get the upgrade by breaking the package up. So what I recommend, guys, is, you know, look at the discount that you're getting here. You literally could give a knife or two away and you're still in better shape. You know, obviously, if I'm being honest, you know, I discount things, right? It's not always full price. It depends on how I'm negotiating with the customer, right? Everything's so different. But a lot of times, you know, it is in a way where it's like, hey, they're getting two or three things where it would cost them more to break this up and go do something different. I'm going to have to figure out something else. So I think it's being truthful when you say that, where, listen, just this package comes as a package. It's perfect how it is. And, you know, it would cost the same, maybe more, to break it up and do something different. The line 1 has changed, so you can kind of take that out. You know, another thing at the booth, right? I'm talking about 100% head nod type stuff, right? And I've noticed, if, you know, you mentioned that someone wasn't coming to the booth to spend $1,000. I've heard that you don't want to put that in someone's brain, but a lot of times if you're doing the think about it and you don't want them to walk away type thing, and you're doing a deal pad, you know, I like to slide that in there because I build rapport. I think it works for my personality, at least. So usually I just say, hey, I know you probably weren't coming here expecting to spend $1,000 on knives today. You know, I get it. You guys were, think about the customer's point of view. If you're at a fair and you're trying to sell this upgrade at a fair, they are walking. We were just walking a street fair the other day. Okay. I don't want to, like, it's weird being the customer, right? And it's like, they're there partying with their family. Someone's hot, someone's thirsty, and someone's drunk probably. Okay. And they're in a group of people. Think about, like, you got to be a little sensitive to the fact that this is really not a good time. So how do we make it a good time? Right. I just kind of mentioned, like, there is never a good time. Right. But you're here and I'm here. Right. So my roundabout way of saying that is like, no, you didn't, you know, wake up this morning, like, let's go to the street fair, spend $1,000 on knives, you know. But what I've also realized is, when is a good day where you wake up and you look at Janice and you're like, honey, 6 months from now, right? Honey, today's knife day. We are ready to call Colin, that random business card buried in the bottom of your purse, with a quote on the back, and go spend our $1,000 on our ultimate upgrade. I'm so excited. We've been saving up for 6 months. Okay. You know, that never happens. So usually what does happen is, next year you guys come to the same exact fair, you know, maybe you see me, maybe you see someone else, maybe you see the same deal, maybe you don't. It's usually not, right? Cutco increases their prices every 2 years. The next time you see us might be 3 years from now. And the worst feeling then is that you wish that you had the knives the whole time, and, you know, you regret doing that. I don't say all that stuff, but I want you guys to kind of get the exact mentality. I want someone to really feel like there'll never be a day that they're going to call me, and if they're here and I'm here and they really like what this is, you know, if I were to just offer you something crazy, would you think about it? Right? Pricing. So people ask this, you know, you do the full, if this really works, if you do the full pieced out price of the ultimate, which is on cutco.com, or now in the order app, you can view, like, the total value of it when you add it to your cart. So you can get that. Great way to leverage the fact that buying sets is, you know, you save like $500. But if you do that and you subtract the full price of the homemaker set from it, you do get in a really great ballpark for where that upgrade should cost, and you get some wiggle room and some play. So if you don't have a good deal sheet, you can just subtract the pieced out price of it, which is extremely generous to the customer if you really think about it, because what did they spend on their homemaker set in 1990? $800, $700, $600, and we're giving them a $1,500 credit for it today. Ms. Jones, it's almost like Cutco's handing you $800 to upgrade your set. I think it's a really, that's a good one. Let's see. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Where are we? Okay, cool. Couple random notes. If you guys are closing on the phones with this stuff.
Colin, sorry, I was fighting the mute. You're great on time. You got another 10 minutes, or as long of that as you want.
Sweet, thank you. Yeah, let me, you know, you guys have this notes file, so I think I don't have to necessarily walk you through some of this stuff at the end. There's just a bunch of notes at the bottom that are random notes. It's actually from a group call I was on, so you guys can kind of take from that you'd like. I think that one more thing I want to cover before we do Q&A. I was thinking about this recently. If you guys that have been selling, supporting yourself, as a CSP for a couple of years, sometimes you feel like maybe there's a lack of like, purpose or something, right? Maybe we've all gone through that. Or if you've hit like a really big goal before, when I hit my silver cup and stuff, and then you're like, what's next? And what is really the meaning behind all this? And, I think one of the things I was reflecting on and why kitchen products, not necessarily like we're making the world a different place, right? But why they do really contribute to something that's larger than ourselves and what we do is, think about why deep down people go and they buy nice kitchen things. Like, so what is really the sizzle that is happening with a customer when they have a nice knife, right? What's going through someone's head when they're using a nice knife at home and you're not there? The first thing I think about is like, well, why is someone cooking? What's the occasion that makes someone say, hey, we're going to cook instead of going to a restaurant? Well, they're probably having people around them that they really love and appreciate, right? Number one. Number two, when they have people around them that they love and they appreciate, they would value, A, that the meal comes out really, really good, okay? That there's no inconsistencies, okay? Cookware, really important for that. B, I think they care about the knife or the meal being served well and being presented well. So, flatware on the table that looks really nice, I think definitely contributes to that. And then you want to be in the kitchen, you want to have the right tool. Like, God forbid you cut yourself or just, things are just harder. You're struggling getting through something. You're cutting something. You're like, oh God, I got to sharpen the knives again before I even start this shit. I just think it really takes away from the overall experience where what are we trying to do? Create lifelong, amazing memories with the people that we love, and we bond over food. So really what we're doing is we're just telling people an easier way to prepare these things with tools that just make it better, easier, more convenient, and that are of higher quality, but also just so that entire experience can be enjoyable as possible from start to finish. And that's where we really come in. So you can buy anything. You can buy a German knife or a German pan or an all-clad or whatever, but if you value the same things that I value.
Whoops. I think we finally, Beach Connection may have died on him. By the way, I am shocked. I'm shocked his connection held as well as it did through all that beaching.
Yeah, and it was really good. Like, it was a solid, video and everything.
I feel like
honestly, he was flowing at the end, bro. I wish he would have finished his thought right there. That was big flames. He was going crazy at the end.
By the way, what a great way to mic drop the end of a talk is just like disconnect your internet like right as you're finishing a like powerful point. I'm gonna steal that move.